kid, you see things so differently to when you're an adult. Because I thought it was amazing, but I can't. Now I look back and think, shit, that wasn't good. So we're like walking through the street. My adopted mother's got my hand, and I can't be more than, I mean, I'm just walking. I'm not very old. And a guy comes up and takes a photograph with his, he goes like this. So he's got one of these cameras with a great big kind of accordion thing on it. I don't know, it's quite strange. And the flashbulb goes, and he takes a picture. And my adopted mother is obviously horrified. I don't know what goes on. But we've got the bodyguards with us, and they shoot this guy in front of me.
Pablo Escobar, it's a name we've rather forgotten now, isn't it? A name known to many as the world's most notorious, infamous drug lord. In a new book, however, his firstborn son tells his own story. Roberto Sendoya Escobar was rescued as a baby following a shootout in which his mother died. Adopted by an MI6 agent, he never knew his true identity until he was 24. I mean, those are the ingredients already of a quite extraordinary story.
Remarkable was the circumstances of how your adoptive father, the man who raised you, came to have you in the first place, working undercover for MI6. He rescued you and adopted you from having got you out of a shootout as your birth mother died from wounds next to you.
Yeah. I mean, I said to Dad quite a few times, what were the images that I had in my head about a woman in a red dress and all these noises. You know, they were just flash images that I had from my early childhood. I didn't really know what they were. They were nightmares.
A few of the audience that are watching are wondering, how the hell does Pablo Escobar's son have this thick English accent?
The whole thing starts for me in 1959. In 1959, this real-life James Bond character, his name is Patrick Whitcomb, and he gets sent down to Colombia on a secret mission to help the Colombian government organize their financial resources and track all the loose cash that's running around in gangs and stuff. This is long before the cartels and long before the drug trafficking business got big. But it's an undercover mission, so they set up a banknote printing operation for the Colombian government, and they have an armored car division which transports the money around Colombia. So this is the legitimate side of the whole company and so on and so forth, but underneath this, the managing director of the company in Colombia is Patrick Whitcomb, who's also a British Secret Service agent operating undercover by orders from the British government. It's just amazing stuff.
Wow.
We haven't even started. So then what happens next, right, is that the armoured cars are working, and this gang decide to rob an armoured car. The gang hide this money in a house in a village. The intelligence gets out that the money's there, so they launch a special mission to retrieve the money, and it all kicks off. You know, it's a proper gunfight. A couple of the hoodlums run away, they get away, the rest are all shot, and the two guys that got away, one of them was a young Pablo Escobar Gaviria, but, you know, nobody knew who this guy was. He's just a kid in a gang. Eventually they get the money back, and then Dad goes into the back room, and there's a young girl, and she's 14, and she's dying. She's got a bullet in her back. It's just an accident. That's what happens in these things, you know. And as she's dying, she hands the MI6 agent a document, and he holds her hand while she dies, and she asks him to look after her baby boy who's in a cot, and his name is Roberto. And so it's very sad. I don't like talking about it. And so I'm Roberto Sendoya Escobar.
Oh, wow, there's so many levels of the political game.
Yeah. It's a multifaceted thing. It's not simple. They realized this was an opportunity to create a situation which would help them in the future. So my paperwork comes through. Then I have this life in Colombia, which is extremely dangerous and violent life. My real father discovers who I am. He's getting quite powerful, and he sends people to try and bring me back. I remember seeing, you know, my bodyguard shooting some guy in the head right in front of me, and it's just, ugh. You never forget that stuff.
So did you have a bodyguard with you at all times?
All times, yeah. When I was at school in Colombia, I didn't go to school on the bus. I got sent to school in an armored truck with 2 bodyguards armed to the teeth. For a short time, they're able to control these situations. And I go to Medellin once a year to meet the man from Medellin, who I don't know who he is. Dad, my adopted father, to infiltrate the businesses that he was trying to gain the trust. used to do some of their cash carrying for them. And this was just a part of infiltrating the very young Medellin cartel operators. We also used to go to Medellin once a year to where the Dons used to meet. Colombia is run by Dons. So you get these local landlords, and they call them the Dons. And they used to have these gatherings. And in the early days, Pablo Escobar and his hoodlums used to do some bodyguarding and stuff at these things. And they had their own table. And I used to go to this table with my bodyguards, and I used to have to sit next to this guy. I didn't know who he was. They just told me that's what I had to do. My dad and his people were over there at that table, and I'd be with my two bodyguards. And I'd have to go and sit with this guy, and, he'd kind of go, yeah.
Is he aware that you're his son?
Yes, on one of the occasions, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, mi hijo. And I thought, okay. And he told me never to forget that I was an Escobar. I didn't think anything of it. But in 1989, in Madrid, he shows me this pile of money, which is, I describe it all in detail in the book. And then he tells me what this money was, and it turns out that for years and years and years, to infiltrate and gain this man's trust, he's been helping him tuck money away from his own family and cartel.
Goodness me! And that note that your father gave you when he was on his deathbed is a coded note to where there are some of Escobar's millions still out there, some of his jewels that he's sort of squirreled away, and that's your next challenge, is to try and decode the note and try and track these millions down.
Yeah, so I've been doing that for quite a while, as you can imagine, trying to work it all out. And I've got a long, long way down the road. I've got some pretty good ideas, studying Dad's movements and his style and what he was doing, along with the code. And I realize now there's some Masonic connotations to this, because Dad was a Freemason. And you've got all these other things involved. And I've now been able to sort of work out quite a lot of it. I don't know exactly where everything is, but what I do know is that the cash I saw in Madrid is now no longer cash. It's now commodities, bullion and that sort of thing. And it's in 4 or 5 different locations, and that's why there's 5 lines of code in the piece of paper. But Dad didn't.
Can you tell us the code? We'd all like to have a go at cracking it, I think, or is that something you're guarding?
No, it's in the book. But in 1989, in Madrid, he shows me this pile of money, which is, I describe it all in detail in the book.